Introducing you to people across North Carolina and around the world who put their Catholic faith into action. This is FaithWorks on Catholic 540 AM Divine Mercy Radio. Now, here's your host for FaithWorks, Ellen White.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of FaithWorks on Divine Mercy Radio. Our show highlights individuals through God's grace who put their faith into action daily, amazing people who have an interesting, sometimes overlooked impact on our Catholic faith. On FaithWorks, we share their stories. I'm your host, Ellen White. Today, I'm joined by author and speaker Emily Stimpson Chapman to talk about her recent essay on trad wives, keyboard warriors, and saving the world while losing your soul. In this powerful piece, Emily explores how even our best intentions, defending truth, promoting virtue, living out our faith, can go astray when they're driven more by pride or opposition than by love for Christ. We'll be discussing what it means to live from love instead of reaction, how to stay centered in Jesus amid online noise, and how to keep our faith grounded in humility and mercy. Welcome to Divine Mercy Radio, Emily. I'm a longtime fan of your writings.
Oh, thank you. It's so good to talk with you.
Okay, so let's get started with this amazing article. And I highly recommend our listeners check it out. And you could certainly search the title. But Emily, which way would you recommend that our listeners go to get some more information about this article?
You should go to my website, emilystimpsonchapman.com, and you will see tab there that says newsletter. And so this was one of my weekly newsletters that I send out. So click on that. It'll take you right to my page, and then you can find it not too far down.
Wonderful. Okay. So for those who haven't read your essay yet, can you give us a brief overview of what inspired it?
Yeah. So I am a writer, which means I have to be on the internet. And so I see a lot of conversations unfolding, and the conversation around so many different things, whether it's marriage, family life, work, the economy, immigration, the chosen, like you name it. And the fever has come to this fever pitch. People are they're constantly arguing. They're constantly debating. They're constantly trying to figure out how to both defend truth and follow Christ in this world. And what you often see is people can get into a posture of reacting in anger, like pushing against the world's brokenness, taking on the burden of having to, engage in every single fight. And that kind of posture, I've seen it over the course. I'm not a little thing anymore. I'm 50 years old. So I've seen over the course of my 50 years how that posture can just wreak havoc on a soul, that you can end up losing your faith while defending your faith. And so, the essay is just me trying to speak a little bit of wisdom into people's hearts about these online conversations and how they have to be very careful what they're building their lives around. Are they building it around Christ and love and growing in holiness, or are they building their life around opposition to what's wrong with the world? And those two kinds of constructions lead to very different ends.
Yes, they do. And why do you feel like this conversation is so urgent right now in today's polarized church and culture? And you know what? I want you to talk to Emily. You talk about this being an online phenomenon. And certainly I feel like it's easier to kind of put these arguments out there and push back if you're not face to face with someone. Do you think that this also happens when you are interacting with people directly?
I think increasingly it does. I think if you're arguing with people all the time online,
right,
that inevitably spills over into your real life, and you end up seeing all of these terrible confrontations now, and your family's just no longer speaking to each other.
Right.
You have kids cutting off contact with their parents cutting off contact with their kids, really destructive patterns of communication, people who they don't even know how to engage over dinner with somebody who thinks differently from them. So yes, I think something that has started online because it's easier online has carried into the quote unquote real world. And so actually I wrote this essay almost 2 years ago now. I re-released it recently, and I think I don't, something was happening at the time that I wrote it, but I was rereading it today in light of a more recent essay that I'd written on anti-Semitism and Nick Fuentes and the Groypers. And I was like, yep. Fever dialogue to fever pitch just keeps going up. This is as relevant as ever, because that's what you see. You see people who are so angry at the state of the world, and they are so wounded and so frustrated. And so instead of doubling down on the pursuit of holiness and charity and graciousness, the reaction has been, well, I'm going to be more offensive than you. Like, you've told me I can't be a little bit offensive, so I'm going to be a lot offensive. You've told me I have to think this way. Watch how the opposite I think. And you see people who think that it means, men telling men that to be a man, you have to be rude and offensive and a truth speaker, no matter how harsh that truth is. And I'm like, you read Jesus, not what he was doing.
Exactly.
So, it's we really, really need to think about how we are communicating truth and who we are giving our hearts to and who we are listening to. And so, yeah, I think it's, even though it's a 2-year-old essay, it goes very well with the piece I wrote this week on anti-Semitism.
Yes, it does. And it's so timely. Though I'm very optimistic, and I feel like that there's a shift that's happening. I think we've been so argumentative for these last few years that people are just tired of it and they want to restart. So I'm feeling optimistic, and maybe after the end of this interview, people will feel more optimistic and know how to do this the right way. So
I hope so.
You start this essay with some stories. They're very, very powerful. A man who defended the church into faithlessness, and a woman who critiqued Catholics into isolation herself. Can you tell us more about those stories and what they reveal?
Yeah. So, they're real stories, although I, of course, don't name names. And honestly, they could apply to many people. Yeah. I've been a quote unquote professional Catholic now for almost 25 years. So I've seen a lot of people go these routes. And no, I talk about a man who really built his life around defending the church. And it's what he did for his living. It's what he did, when he was hanging out with friends. It's what he talked about at home with his kids. But when your whole life is constructed around playing defense and looking for what's wrong and defending the church against what's wrong and defending Christ against what's wrong, you only start seeing what is wrong. And you're not nurturing your soul with what's right and what's good and what's true and what's beautiful. Like you've built up all these walls of defense that grace has a hard time penetrating through. And this man eventually lost his faith, left the church, and is struggling to this day. And then the woman, she was, so the man came from a much more conservative bent. She came from a more liberal bent, and she hated hypocrisy in her fellow Catholics, as do, we all do. But there was a lot of hatred and not a lot of grace and not a lot of compassion and not a lot of recognizing how many people were doing the best that they could. And so she started building her life around critiquing hypocrisy in Catholics in a very witty, clever way that got her lots of attention. And we all like attention. And then she began seeking it more and more and more until nobody was good enough. And yeah, she is struggling in her own way right now, where she stands so far apart from the Catholics who she once would have said were her fellow Catholics and friends. And now, she sees herself on a different plane altogether. And she too is struggling and broken. So I'm not trying to judge hearts. These are people who I've watched, and that's what's happened to them. Like their own posture of critiquing and defensiveness has put a huge wedge between them and the church and their communities and their families, their marriages. It's been very destructive.
I know for me, Emily, it's helped. And I'm famous for sticky notes all over my house with little reminders. And one of them that I had for many years said, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And if we're reorienting ourselves to have an attitude of gratitude, just starting small, you'll find yourself looking for things to be grateful for, as opposed to, and you know, this man and this woman, I certainly experienced some of those things myself in my own life. And when I recognized that I was kind of cornering myself away from the people that God had placed into my life, I thought, I need to kind of regroup here and figure out what it is that I'm doing wrong. And that's kind of where that perspective sticky note came up. So, and having that attitude of gratitude, it really helped me. Have you ever found yourself slipping into either of those mindsets, defensiveness or criticism on your journey?
I am a choleric redhead. So yes,
right.
God made me strong, stubborn, and feisty.
Yep.
Yes, I am definitely.
I can relate.
And I think it's watching. It's one of I've watched how that affects me when that's what I do, when I'm always in defense mode, when I have to be in mic drop, mode as a writer, when I'm constantly looking for something that's wrong. I see how that affects me, and I absolutely know it spills over into real life. And so I have learned through my own brokenness what bears fruit, and what bears fruit is not me jumping with both feet into the fire to fight all the fights for Jesus. But it is me looking at the people who I may disagree with and seeing how much God loves them, and trying to see who they are and why they think the way they do, and how do they need to be loved and listened to in that moment. And how do I acknowledge they're struggling while still speaking truth to them, and really just putting the person first instead of the abstract concept first, like always trying to lead with focus on the person and the difference that makes in my own interior disposition, my own relationship to Christ, my own relationship to myself, but also in the fruit that I'm actually able to bear in the world over the long haul.
Yeah, you talked so beautifully about how important it is to listen and seeing Christ in them. That is so true. We are all made in the image and likeness of God, and leading with that as opposed to how wrong they are with their own particular views is not a good thing. And how you're feeling, whether or not you're experiencing interior peace by this encounter. Beautifully said, Emily. Thank you so much. Okay, so let's pick this thing apart. So it's trad wives. You talk about like the keyboard warriors, and with this reference to the trad wife and the trad wife trend, what drew you to engage with that conversation?
Well, it's all over in my Instagram. We were talking earlier,
Right.
I have, even though I'm 50, I married later in life, and then we weren't able to have kids. So we adopted, and I have a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 4-year-old. So I am sort of in a slightly younger space just because of my kids. Like, I'm following moms for what sort of winter coats are they sharing, or what are their meal tips, or what toys are you getting the little ones for Christmas? The thing is, I am a stay-at-home mom. I write, I work, but I have always been home in the house with my children. Most of my best friends are homeschooling moms. They're all home. So what has been strange, though, is that none of them, I kept hearing the phrase trad wife. And I was like, well, none of my friends who are homeschooling, like stay-at-home moms, call themselves trad wives. What is this trad wife phenomenon? And it was very performative. It was very sort of like a in your face, like, I'm not going to go to college. I'm going to take care of my husband. I'm going to what did some woman talk? She talked about her whole life being, this is like 2 years ago. So, it's like a thumb in the eye to the culture and to feminism. And I was like, oh, honey, if you are shaping your whole life around like sticking it to feminists or your parents, you think put unnatural expectations on you. Like, this is going to burn out fast. Like, your life in the home, your life as a wife, as a mother, as a teacher of your children, it has to be rooted in love and vocation and an abiding sense of this is where God has called you to be. Like, it's something that is discerned carefully and prudently and held loosely, because God often, what you learn over the years is seasons change and God presents different obstacles to you and different things that need to happen. And I was like, if your whole identity is constructed around you have to do this in order to stick it to somebody else or prove somebody wrong or show the world how it needs to be done, when those circumstances shift, you are going to be in trouble. Like, you have to hold these things loosely and have them rooted in Christ's call in the moment and love, or you're going to be in a world of hurt a few years down the road.
Yeah, and so burnt out. I mean, I certainly experienced that as a homeschool mom. I felt like this is my identity. I have to do certain things to check the boxes, every day. And this is, what's expected of my children and my family. And it's not that way.
When your identity as a woman, like this performative idea of, okay, if I want to be a good woman, then here's the box I must fit into. And I must do these things every day. And it loses the sense of individuality, of what God is calling you to, of the children he's given you, of the people he's given you to love. It is absolutely exhausting to feel like you have to cram yourself into a box in order to be, a virtuous woman, when God's call is so much bigger and wilder and more surprising than that, and so much more freeing. It's so much more freeing.
Yes. So what would the appropriate response be? Not obviously worrying about what your title is. What would you say, Emily, is the appropriate response?
Appropriate response to
and living out this life virtuously as a Catholic woman. As opposed to,
I think one of the great things is to lead with humility.
Humility.
Humility, like so much humility, where you're like, well, I think this is, what God wants us to do right now, but I could be wrong. I'm so often wrong.
Yes,
I think this is how Christ is asking me to serve my family right now, but we'll see. He's always surprising me. Or I feel like this is how he's calling me to do it, but I feel absolutely ill-equipped to do this. I have no idea how to keep my house clean with 3 children under 3, to which every woman on the planet will be like, nobody does, not possible. There's, I think, just being comfortable with and the same thing goes if you're working. It's, it's stressful to work. It's tough to manage your laundry room. It's hard to balance these things. And instead of trying to put on a facade of of playing the role of trad wife or professional woman, to be authentically yourself and admit where you're struggling and admit where you're not sure, and admit that you're doing the very best that you can, but gosh, you sure feel like it's never good enough. And I think when you just take that posture of humility, it becomes much easier to hear God's voice and much easier to respond to the changing needs in front of you, and much easier to love the other broken people who are standing in front of you, because they can share their brokenness with you when you're sharing your brokenness with them. If you are coming across as, I am perfect and this is how it has to be, and if you're not doing it this way, you're obviously wrong, nobody can ever really share themselves with you. And so you don't ever really get to love other people. You've put up too much of a barrier, a facade between you two.
Yes. And I talk about being authentic all the time and sharing your own struggles and being honest about that, because people are more inclined to share their own struggles and, get help that way too. And I'm curious too, obviously we've said many, many times that kids can see right through you when you're not being honest. And if you are putting yourself out there as defending the truth and you're acting this way, kind of holier than thou, or even living your own interpretation, maybe rigidly, of the faith, what kind of message does that send to the people that we encounter that might be interested in pursuing, Catholicism or joining the church?
I mean, it ultimately says it's not real.
Exactly.
It says that this is just an act that you're putting on. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think it's in our brokenness, it's in our humility, it's in our vulnerability that others see grace working in us. They see us apologizing. They see us trying. They see that slow work of grace. And if you are always, doing things exactly right, but everyone can tell you're absolutely, we're not fooling that many people. You can only fool so many people for so long. Yes. And you can only fool the most important people in your life. If you're a wife, if you're a mother, if you're a father, that you want to be evangelizing, are your children. And there's no way you can put on that kind of act with your kids round the clock. So, we apologize a lot, and I apologize a lot in this house for losing my temper, for, dropping the ball on something, for not being who I want to be. And my kids see me working that out with Christ. They see me going to confession. They see me, really trying to love them as best as I can, even though, it's always imperfect. And I don't know, but even then, I could do everything right. I could be the most humble, vulnerable, attentive mother, and I could still have a kid who goes off the rails. Like that's, what you have to learn is it's very hard for me because I like to control things. Yes, but too. You cannot control people. Mm-hmm. You can't. And that's what a lot of the reactions, a lot of the defensiveness is so often rooted in a desire to control. You want to control your world. You want everything to be black and white with clear-cut answers. You do this and it'll all turn out okay. You want to control other people. You want other people doing what you think is best for them. You treat your children like they're projects, like they're objects. That if you do A, B, and C, they'll automatically get the right outcome that you have decided upon for them. And that's just not how life works. And so that's where that posture of humility just says, I don't actually know what's best. I don't know the best path for my child. I think I know, but I don't. I mean, think about the path that you and I can think about the paths we've walked. I've done so many things over the course of my life that my parents, it was not in their plan for me, for good and for ill, it was not their plan. And yet look at how God has used that and look at where he's brought me. And that if my mom had been able to control everything exactly how she wanted to when I was, a young girl and mapped everything out, I would not be living this life that God has graced me with. So I think it's just, again, it's that humility. Like, I can't control the world. I can't fight every battle. God is in charge. I am not God. He knows what he is doing. He knows what he is about. Mm-hmm. I do not have to make my whole life fighting every battle for God. He can fight his own battles. Yes.
And we are not their saviors. We are their mothers.
No, we are not.
Yeah. And, somebody reminded me at one point, and this was really a deal changer for me with recognizing that even when Christ was walking the world and discipling, there were people that turned away from him when he was speaking about the Eucharist. And I thought, you know what, if he has people that know the truth that are turning away from it, then who am I to even make a difference when somebody is choosing? And, it's freedom. So
right. And the way he responds to that is not by raining down hellfire on people. It's not by yelling at people and berating people. Like, the only people he really yelled at were the Pharisees, and he's Jesus. So he gets to know when he can yell and when he can't. We don't know that. Right. He responded by love. He responded with meekness, by laying himself down on the cross and allowing the guards to hammer the nails in and place the crown of thorn on his head. That's his response. And so why we think that the proper response to the brokenness in the world is to yell at it and rail at people and be as harsh and critical and shocking as possible, when the Lord of the universe showed us already how we were supposed to respond to the evil in the world. That's ultimately what saves the day.
Mm-hmm. his response. That's what we should follow.
Yes, his meekness.
Okay. If you're just tuning in, this is Ellen White with FaithWorks on Divine Mercy Radio. And today I'm speaking with author and speaker Emily Stimpson Chapman about her recent essay, or re-released recent essay, on trad wives, keyboard warriors, and saving the world while losing your soul. We're diving into her reflections on Catholic culture today, what it means to build a life rooted in love rather than opposition, how to live the truth with mercy and humility, and how to keep Christ at the center of it all. We're grateful for our show's sponsor, Thales College. Emily, you talked in this essay about the spiritual consequences of anger. And yeah, like you said, with your passion, I'm very much that way. You write that anger depletes the soil of our souls. What does that look like in real life?
I mean, I think when you let anger lead, when you let anger take over, anger is such a powerful emotion. Mm-hmm. It can rule us easily. It is easy to be angry. It crowds out the gratitude. It crowds out the compassion. It crowds out the vision of the person standing in front of you as another broken human being in need of love and mercy and grace. Anger is easy. Doing the right thing is hard. And so when we let anger take over in us, it becomes so much more difficult to break out of that and choose to do the right thing, to choose love, mercy, compassion, chastity, prudence, fortitude, whatever it might be. The book, the letter from St. James just talks about how, God does not work through the anger of man. Like that's not how God does it. So we just have to think about, what are we doing to ourselves? How are we blinding ourselves with anger? I mean, anger is good. Anger, like righteous anger, can be a good thing, but it's supposed to move you on to doing something good. Mm-hmm. Like it's supposed to lead to action. If you just sit in the anger, if you just wallow in the anger, it will consume you. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. You talk about righteous anger and how sometimes that can feel justified, especially online. How do we tell when it's crossed the line into something spiritually destructive?
And I think you can tell when your first response is always anger, when it's leading you to not see the person in front of you.
So true.
When you're not treating the other person in front of you as Christ would have treated them. Mm-hmm. Like you're not seeing them as human. You're seeing them as the problem. When you lose the humanity and when you lose joy, like I think that's people who walk around angry all the time have no room for joy. They have no room for gratitude. They're not feeling peace. They're constantly in turmoil. And again, I'm a redhead. I know what this feels like. So I know what it's like when anger is consuming my heart. And I know what it's like when I've, made the decision to set anger aside and let there be room for other graces to come into me. And so, I think absence of joy, absence of compassion, absence of sorrow for the person in front of you who may be doing something really bad, like really, really bad. They may be hurting themselves profoundly. And compassion, as much as anger, has to be there. If you're not feeling compassion for the person who has sinned, then it's time to take a step back and check out your own heart.
There was a bagel shop that I used to frequent in another town that we lived in, and they had a sign right at the front that said, kindness is important because you have no idea what the person you're encountering is going through that day. So, and again, it's a shift, right, in our own perspective and not just, but right, you also said, if we lead with anger, there's a heart check that needs to happen. Why are we doing this? We need to back up and recognize who it is that we are encountering and, an attitude of resentment. And it's not good. So, such wonderful words of wisdom here with us. Now, let's talk about the Christ-centered alternative. We've certainly covered a lot of it in your responses and, laying out the difference between when we're not looking at the person that we're encountering as a child of God and just as an argument that we need to win. You write that love the good more than you hate the bad. It's such a powerful line. What does that look like lived out in a daily life, Emily?
Gosh, I mean, it's what's motivating you. So when you love the good, you want to pursue the good, you want to do the good, you want to be the good, like you want to be transformed. When you hate the bad, it's not about you anymore. It's about them. Like they're the problem. They're what's wrong. They've got to change. I always think about G.K. Chesterton, who, famously, there was a newspaper competition and they wanted people to write, what's wrong with the world.
Me.
His essay was, I am, like, that's me, I'm what's wrong. And I think that's when you love the good. You're like, oh, that's so beautiful. I want to be that beautiful too. Look at how I'm not that beautiful. This is where I have to grow. This is where I have to change. This is where I need to beg God for more grace. Whereas when you're hating the bad, that's so terrible. That's so wrong. That needs to change. And all of that self-reflection, that begging for grace, that desire to be more like God made you to be, there's no room for that because you're too busy tearing everything else down.
I think a lot about the beam, too, when I'm inclined to complain about what somebody else is doing. I remind myself about the beam in my own eye. How does Jesus model this balance of truth and mercy for us, Emily, would you say?
I mean, he goes to the cross.
Right. Again.
He goes to the cross. I keep thinking about that. He came not to condemn the world. He didn't come to condemn the world. Like we want to condemn the world.
Yeah.
We want to say, okay, you're wrong and this is what's the problem with the economy and you're the people that are wrong with the workplace and you're what's wrong with the family. And Jesus doesn't do that. Like he came and he loved us and he saved us. And so stepping back from that condemnatory posture and being like, yes, there is brokenness. There are lies. There is deep sin, but the Lord still loves the world. Even he died for us in our sin. He didn't die for us when we were perfect. He died for us in our sin. So how do I love this person? How do I lay down my life for them? How do I speak the truth to them, but to them, like seeing them as they are in their brokenness, in their struggles? It's just that posture of putting the person first and not compromising with the truth, but not beating them over the head with truth as a cudgel. I talked a little bit about, the phrase Christ is King has gotten used as a cudgel increasingly. People are like throwing it down like a gauntlet before battle, like Christ is King. I dare you to, cross me on that. I'm like, I don't think that's really what converts hearts. What converts hearts is, loving as Christ the King loved and living as Christ the King lived. And like, if you really want to glorify Christ, you become more like him. You don't go around shouting it in people's face. And I'm a writer. I talk about truth all the time. I teach the truth. I talk about hard topics. I talk about IVF. I talk about NFP. I talk about anti-Semitism, which didn't used to be a hard topic, but these days it is. So I'm not saying don't ever talk about the truth, because obviously I talk about the truth all the time. But it really is the posture you take towards the truth. And and you have to accept some people are going to reject it. And you can't always argue with them about it. You can state the truth lovingly, plainly, clearly, and accept that Jesus did that and got crucified.
Yeah, truth and charity. And I keep thinking about just different people that I've encountered that don't have the same belief system that I do, Emily. And it's so much more effective to just sit and talk with them about whatever, and build that relationship, as opposed to coming with that, like you said, that gauntlet of Christ as King. And they would just turn around and walk away from that. So meeting people where they are and building that relationship. What helps you stay grounded in Christ rather than in reaction or comparison, Emily?
Oh gosh, my own imperfections.
Right.
There's so many of them. Yes, the Lord keeps those front and center in my face. So I really don't have, and yeah, even when I always make mistakes with how I address things. I don't do this perfectly, but I do see pretty quickly how the mistakes that I'm making. And I'm like, okay, Lord, you're right. Like there I go again. Thank you. Thank you for loving me in this. And so I'm very grateful for my redheaded stumbling and bumbling that I do, because I'm sure that is the only thing keeping me, palatable to everybody around me.
That's right. Okay, so let's talk about some practical habits that can help believers abide in Christ. Things like the sacraments, silence, gratitude, relationships. What would you say?
Yeah, no, I mean, exactly that. Like the graces of the Eucharist are real.
Yeah.
By Scott Hahn and I do a lot of work together. And once we were talking, he's like, people put more faith in Tylenol than they do in the Eucharist. And I was like, you are so right.
That's so
like
true.
we have a Tylenol, we have a headache, we run for the Tylenol. If we, are struggling spiritually, we don't run nearly so quickly to the tabernacle. So yes, get yourself in front of the Eucharist, receive the Eucharist, like be around the Eucharist as much as you can. Gratitude is huge. Looking around you for the beautiful, just the littlest things, like the littlest practices, like your morning coffee, the leaves on the trees right now, your cat chasing her tail, whatever it is. Like there's so many beautiful things, good things all around us, and to just be looking for them and thanking God for them. Spending time away, get off of the phone, put the phone down, go out in nature. Just spending some time away from technology can help reset
oh my gosh, yes,
the arguing in our heads. One of the things that I like to do, I love giving money to people and I love raising money for people, because you end up seeing how good people so many people really, there's so much good in them. They have good hearts. They have good desires. They just don't always know what to do with it. So if you do something good, go to a homeless shelter, be a part of a fundraiser, like go to a preschool, just do something that puts you around people who really are serving and loving in some way. And that can be a reminder of, just people, we're all made in the image of God, and God is good. And although we are broken and wounded by sin, like that original goodness is still stamped on each of us. And yeah, go to bed, get some more sleep, eat a good meal, have a glass of wine, take care of yourself in a way to reset.
But especially in light of these two characters that you mentioned that are relevant to so many of us in this essay, Emily, I really like what it was Pope John the 23rd, I think, that said, Lord, I'm going to bed. I'm tired. It's your church. You take care of it. So, when these arguments just are getting out of hand and we know we need to back up, just remember that God is fighting this battle, not us.
Exactly. And if you're the type of person who has struggles to speak up, maybe you have to be more discerning about when it's important to speak up. If you're the type of person who leads with a response, work on letting people be wrong. Like, just don't wade into the comment wars. Walk away. It doesn't have to be tit for tat for, 7 hours while you're neglecting your family and arguing with somebody online.
I think I already know what your answer is going to be to this question, but I want to ask it anyway. When people are burnt out with online Catholic debates, where should they turn to start to refocus and heal? What do you think?
I mean, first get offline.
Exactly.
Just don't do that.
Turn it off.
And go to your parish. Like, I'm a big fan of talking to some of the older people in the parish.
Oh,
there's
great
so
suggestion.
many beautiful, faithful, the little old ladies praying the rosary, the grandpas running the KFC breakfast. Like, talk to them, ask them if they ever want to get coffee after Mass. Just learn their name just learn their name. Start to talk to some of these sweet, older, faithful, wise people. I think one of the problems of our age is we spend too much time with people who are in our exact peer group and think exactly like us. And just go make a friend who's not the same age as you. Find a friend who is younger. Find a friend who's older. get out of your immediate circle, and the younger friends will give you perspective and help you to remind you, gosh, look how little they know. I'm sure I knew that much, but that just reminds you of your own like littleness. And then the older friends, you're like, oh my goodness, look how much more I have to grow. So just listening to people in different places in life, I think, can help.
Great reminder. And I certainly do that. I have, this is a shout out to Miss Loretta, who is incredibly helpful to me in my own journey. And she's such a beautiful witness, somebody that I would like to be at her stage in life. So that's such a great reminder, Emily. Yeah, we have these incredible witnesses in our own path if we just open our eyes to them and recognize how much they can help us. All right, so let's do some final reflection here. If listeners want to take one message away from this essay, Emily, what do you hope that it is?
Just to focus on Christ. He's in charge, not you. Like, soak him in, soak in his love, soak in his graces, soak in his mercies, and trust that he loves the people who you're fighting with far more than you love them, and he's more concerned about them, way more than you are concerned about them, and he's got this. You do not have to save the world.
He's got this. All right, so how can we become a sign of contradiction in the world without becoming bitter or burnt out?
I think don't think about being a sign of contradiction.
Right.
Don't worry about it. Worry about doing what God wants you to do. Worry about Jesus. Worry about, loving him more and serving him more and doing as he asks you to do, and do it for him. And he'll take care of the sign of contradiction part all on his own.
That's so great. All right. What's one simple thing our listeners could do this week to love the good in their homes, parishes, or online communities, Emily?
Oh, smile at a baby. Like, hold a baby, be around child, something innocent and beautiful. Laugh with child, twirl in a circle with the toddler. Like, do something childlike. If you can get on swings, go on swings. Like, just walk away and enjoy this beautiful, beautiful world God has given us, and the joy of having a body that moves if it moves, or a voice that speaks if it speaks, eyes that see, and just give thanks.
Give thanks. Attitude of gratitude. All right, Emily, say again how our listeners can find you and connect with you online.
Best way is my website, emilystimpsonchapman.com. You can find my newsletter on Substack, Through a Glass Darkly there. You can find my podcast, Visitation Sessions.
That's great.
You can see all of my books. I've got 3 books out this fall. It's a little bit wild. So yes, emilystimpsonchapman.com is the quick and easy place.
I'd love to have you back on to talk about the books that you're releasing. Wow. Okay, let's do that. Give me the titles of the books that you got.
Yes. The first is The Story of All Stories, a Bible for young Catholics through Word on Fire. It is a gorgeous story Bible out. First of its kind, deeply Catholic. It's great. Second is called Around the Catholic Table, and that is a cookbook for easy everyday dinners and easy hospitality. It also has essays on hospitality, both the spirituality of it and the practicality of it, and Sacred Wine, the holy heritage and history of Catholic vintners. So it looks at how the history of winemaking has been shaped by Catholicism, and that is with Marian Press.
Oh my gosh. All 3 look so good. Okay. The Story of All Stories.
Story of All Stories.
And then Sacred Wine and Around the Catholic Table. I think I'm going to be adding some books to my bookshelf soon.
And you can buy those on my website too.
Fantastic. EmilyStimpsonChapman.com, right?
All right. And I've got to go pick up some toddlers from school.
All right. If you missed it, thank you so much, Emily. I so appreciate you coming in. We'll have you back on soon.
It was great talking to you.
God bless.
Bye-bye.
If you missed any part of this episode or want to catch up on past conversations filled with inspiration and hope, you can find them all at divinemercyradio.org. Just click on local shows. And don't forget, you can take FaithWorks with you wherever you go. Download the free Divine Mercy Radio app from your app store. Simply search Divine Mercy Radio NC, and you'll be all set to listen anytime, anywhere. God bless.